Welcome along once again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to RPL recaps. This time it is week 19, the penultimate round on the F1 24 game cycle for all of our tiers last seasons. This past week, Night Owl became the 14th different Tier 2 champion. Devin won from pole for the first time in a very cluster-filled race in Singapore Tier 3. And Skither played the team game with Leral in the Haas, helping Skither win his third race in a row. However, today we start with F1 25. We have some brand new news on the upcoming game cycle finally. May 27th is the release for the Iconic Edition. May 30th is the release for the Standard Edition. We already had the first beta, which featured 3 different tracks: Hungary, Vegas, and Circuit of the Americas. One of the new features includes reverse circuits. Now the question becomes, will that be included? Time will tell, but Polish, welcome along. What is your thoughts?
Well, I've kind of my expectations for F1 games has gone down the drain over the last few years. But from what I've heard, there's a lot of potential with this game. I'm not really sure about the whole reverse circuits thing. Like, I guess it could be a fun idea, like even for like maybe a league race type of thing. Like, just say, hey, we're just gonna go to reverse Imola. Why not? I think it could be. I think it could be pretty fun. But I kind of wish they did something different, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But I could see where people might enjoy that idea, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I feel like everyone would have wanted classic tracks, classic cars, wet time trial. Jack Miles, thank you for that one. Yeah, I think everyone would have preferred something like that. However, it's not to minimize the cool feature that it is. I think there's a lot of tracks people would do this at, Spa being one of them, Monaco, you said Imola, maybe Las Vegas. There's a lot of tracks I think people would try this at. So again, not a bad idea particularly, but there's other options they could have went with. For the driving on the game itself, it does sound like drivers are calling it something similar to F1 23, which I hate to use that terminology, but based on the way it's been described, I don't think that's a bad way to describe it at all. One of the things they do need to get rid of is the rear locking method. You shouldn't have to use that to be fast. We saw in our race in Japan in Tier 1, Saberfan qualified really well in that race. Whether he was a driver who cheated or not, he was friends with someone who did. And the reason why he qualified so well and he didn't race as well wasn't necessarily this game. It would have been because, oh, the tire wear on the car, it's more effective. That's why you see V-Carbs and Haas drop off in the race. Well, for him, it was the rear locking method on 23. And the driving style seems like a combination of 23 and 24. So good news so far, but we got to hope they keep the stuff on the beta in the game, with that being said.
Yeah, like at the end of the day, this is only a beta for a select few people, so our first real, I guess, test is going to be when the game first drops on May 27th for the premium edition. Well, moving on to our next topic, Leral Fusion got his first pole in Tier 2 and won on track, but lost it because he sped in the pits. But even though he did speed in the pits, it was still a fantastic drive from him. So how will this drive be looked at? Starting with you, Ryan.
Well, it depends. Are we going to talk about moving him off a tier? I don't know. He got points on his Tier 1 debut, which we'll talk about later, and that was after a crash that happened on lap 1 too. But I think outside of talking about moving people up tiers, because I think we're kind of over that until we get to F1 25, which makes sense. It's a good time to be. Brazil, he comes to one of his best circuits, got a podium here last season in Tier 2 on that Tier 2 return. It's a good track to have a dominant performance at, but he was pulling away very slightly with drivers behind him on fresher tires. Also, he was pulling away in the sense of not being in a DRS train, so it was a really dominating win if it would have stood. He sped in the pits, a mistake from him. It shows the Leral Fusion, who won the Tier 3 championship the season prior, who had slower pace than Alex Norris, can still be at the front of the field. However, it's going to be mistakes that has him beat Night Owl or Reese or whoever next season. So, yeah, I think it's going to go down as a drive that definitely is looked back in terms of what ifs, and definitely what could have been, because this could have been McLaren's first win in the lower tiers this end of the season game cycle, or end of the season or end of the game cycle seasons, I guess you could say. Excuse me, right there.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. It was a fantastic drive from Fusion. I think all the talk, we shouldn't have any talk about, him moving up a tier. I think tier 2 is a good spot for him, at least for right now, until the new game does come out, and then obviously we'll get a new perspective on that. But uh, you got to remember, like, he was pulling out a gap, but the guys behind him were also fighting because they knew that that was the fight for the win. So that could also
Yeah.
be a reason why he was pulling such of a gap. Not to take anything away from Fusion, I think he still
No,
would
no,
have
no.
won that race if he did not get that speeding penalty. But just is something to think about, and what could have changed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Fusion, he's a driver who has definitely put in the effort too. He's got faster throughout this game cycle. He didn't have a tier 2 podium until this race a season ago, so it does show certain drivers who have their certain tracks, they can beat Night Owl and Reese on their day. And I know Reese wasn't there, but Night Owl was, and he was the one who won the race. So yeah, I think it's a few certain scenarios maybe could have went in his favor a little better, but the fact of the matter is it just didn't, and that was the truth, and that's the way he's going to be looking back at it. It's just a shame. Although it was his fault, I still feel bad for him nonetheless. Someone who I also felt bad for the day prior was Beatnik. He crashed with Mythic on the final lap in Tier 3 Singapore en route to what would have been a podium for Beatnik, but because of the crash, he settled for 6th place. However, he got a chance to redeem himself the day after. Reese Dainty wasn't racing around Brazil in Tier 2, so that meant his title hopes were over. However, it gave a new opportunity for Beatnik to end up back on the Tier 2 podium after his mess that happened in Japan prior in the season. Racing for Mercedes on loan that day, crashing while racing side by side for a podium spot in the Casio Triangle, resulted in him not getting the podium back in Tier 2. Now this weekend, he got back on the Tier 2 podium in Brazil alongside Tor Penguin and Night Owl up there. I think this is a good hero, zero to hero story, I have to say, Polish. No doubt about it, in my mind, at least.
No, I absolutely agree. When you have moments like that did happen in Singapore in the Tier 3 race, you just kind of have to put your head down and just say, hey, whatever, like what happened, the past is the past, and just move on. Yeah. And that's what Beatnik did, and he got a podium to show for it. So really good drive from him in that Tier 2 race at Brazil.
Yeah, it was a smaller field, so of course, situation a little different, I guess you could say. Maybe not as much credibility, but at the same time, the results are there. And you know what? The pace has finally been there too from Beatnik. We were wondering, whenever he was called to pair Mintoki in Japan, would he be up to the challenge? And obviously, a safety car did help him in that sense, but he still drove up at the front of the field and did what he needed to try and get that podium that day. Little inexperience that was kind of coming on this game kicked him back there, and while it resulted in him spinning out alongside JTK as we know it, then signed that contract with Mintoki as the teammate, and we're wondering, is he going to be up to the task there? Polo was Mintoki's teammate this season and didn't really show up as much, only 2 points, retired again this week, so of course maybe bigger expectations compared to what Polo's been able to produce for next season alongside Mintoki. And I think right now it's safe to say, Polish, with what Beatnik has been doing, even though he has not won a Tier 3 race since returning and whatnot, the Tier 2 pace, when he's raced there, whether it's pressure on or pressure off, it's definitely there, no doubt about it.
100%. He definitely has the pace to compete in Tier 2 and in Tier 3, if you will. But I think it's unfair to say, if for people to maybe say, I don't know if anyone's talking about this, but like it's unfair to say like, oh, the competition wasn't that steep, there wasn't many drivers. There was still some really fast guys in that Tier 2 race that, have the pace to win week in and week out, and pretty much all the fast cars were there. There was just a bunch of back markers and mid-pack cars that weren't there. So it's wrong to take anything away from Beatnik. He had a fantastic drive, and I think we should
100%.
expect good things to come next season in Tier 2 from him.
All right. Well, we talked about Tier 3, and we're going to continue to talk about Tier 3 a bit as well. And we didn't talk about Tier 3 for Beatnik's podium, but we did for the zero to hero moment he had from, 24 hours apart. We're going to start with a few different things here with what's the word. So, Tier 3 Singapore definitely had that cluster-filled race, but we still have a championship battle that either could be one in the storage room, might not be. We don't know what will happen, but there was a chaotic race in Singapore, and Invade and Mally, two title rivals, came to collision. Invade will definitely feel a little different about this situation now, almost a week apart. He felt like he was brake checked by Mally 41, but it's time to talk about so far into our final round at Abu Dhabi. There are two different tales in terms of the way their seasons have gone. Polish Invade's championship challenge will be described, whether he wins it or not, and probably likely to lose at this point, whether it's mathematically or statistically, will be described as blank.
Something along the lines of, what's what I'm thinking of? Like overcoming adversity, I guess you could say. You know, he was behind the eight ball pretty much this whole season. Mally had a fantastic start to the season and had a very big points gap at one point to Invade, but Invade's been slowly chipping away at it. So if Invade does in fact win the championship, and even if he doesn't, he still made a great comeback to at least get within striking distance of Will.
My word is going to be scenarios. I'm going to be a little harsh on Invade here, but reasonably so. If you want to win the Tier 3 championship, you need to have a very consistent season. And even if you get unlucky, like drivers like Uri did, you still need to have the results consistently. Invade has a lot of things to hold his head high on, regardless of how he finishes the season. Finally, that Imola curse for him ended. He won there. He had great teamwork at times with SV. He had the podiums to back it up, became the all-time points leader. He has a lot of things to look at for this season in terms of Tier 3.
Absolutely.
But the word I use is scenarios. And the problem for that with Invade is, as many times as he has been unlucky, most of the stuff not his fault, he is putting himself in these situations to be crashed. This tier is full of it. I saw Mally in Singapore just simply letting people go, realizing it was the right choice to do. Invade did not let people go when it was needed, and simply was too aggressive in situations, even when they weren't his fault. So if you're near the crash a lot, you're going to be the driver to lose out on it. However, on your unlucky days, you got to make it up. And I think these scenarios are stuff that Invade's going to be looking back at saying, what could I have done different to not be involved in this? I think Singapore was a who's who situation. You can't really judge on that, but there's still a lot of races. Invade lost too many points in, and that's what's going to be looked at. Look at when Uri, George, and even Leral Fusion won their championships. Their bad days were still good days.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you on that. And looking at the other end of the spectrum, Mally obviously had a great points gap to start this season. But if you had to put into one word his defensive title battle, what would it be described as?
This one I'm going to be a little tough on and kind of have to use two words, but I mean, I'll limit it down to one word. I'm going to say damage limitation, and really just down it to limitation. He started out the season winning in the winning in the Aston, winning in the Mercedes, and then when he transferred over to the Williams, he knew his gap was so large to where it was damage limitation. I know it's a bad look to be getting podiums constantly in a tier full of chaos in a Williams, but he got those podiums because his race IQ and everything he had back then on the days of F1 2018 simply came to him. He realized, okay, I know my situation with these drivers, even though I've not raced them for a while. If I simply keep my nose clean, keep myself in these situations, I can go attack these last 5 laps the best I can, and the results will be there. And they were there. He's not got a single track limit penalty this season. He's been the smarter driver in these situations, and that's why right now he's the championship leader and likely to win the championship again. Yes, he doesn't have the pace from the esports days, but he's been able to limit what has gone on in his bad days. In Singapore, he got involved in 2 different accidents and still ended up on the podium, it's seeming to be. So you know what? I think it's limitation because his bad days still have turned into somewhat half-decent days.
I'm kind of going to piggyback off of what you said and use the word strategic, I guess, for Will. He might not be the fastest guy out there. Obviously, he isn't a Williams, so that's going to be challenging to be the fastest guy out there. But I do think he is one of the smartest because you very rarely see Will go out and attempt to and say, I'm going to win this race. I'm going to attempt to just pass people and get to the front as quick as I can. He stays kind of in that mid-pack, kind of like the 8th, 9th, 10th range, where you would usually see like a Williams car in like that mid-pack to the backpack type of area. He stays there, and he's able to just kind of pick them off one by one as people start crashing or getting track limit penalties. And he's been really good about not getting into those incidents and not going off track. He's been taking it kind of cautiously, kind of just doing his own thing, and it's really worked to his benefit.
Alrighty, time for our big finish, and I would have to agree. He's only day that he had that mistake was Monaco, like that. But yeah, either way, and besides Singapore out of his own doing, I would say. But anyways, our big finish, time for that. We have a lot of topics to talk about, and we'll have to go through it very quickly. So, one of the things that has changed from this week compared to last is penalty points. Penalty points for retiring in the pit lane without reason/good reason. I think I can kind of get that away because Jack has clarified it causes yellow flags. So almost everyone's been reported for it regardless of reason. But no matter the reason, the penalty for it changes from 4 to 2 penalty points. Polish, your immediate thoughts?
I think that's a fine change. I thought 4 penalty points was a bit egregious. I originally did not like the rule that retiring in pits gave you a penalty, but at the same time, I kind of understood it. So I do like the change. I really do. I think it's a smart one. The next thing, TPs must appeal incidents for their drivers now, and the appeal channel has been restricted to TPs and admins only. The drivers are no longer allowed to talk in that chat, and this was after a huge kerfuffle with Alex Norris in Tier 1. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Alex and Cryptic, their incident there. I think this is the right change. I wish they definitely made an announcement about this. There needs to be more clarification on why this stuff changes the way it has. I don't think anyone would disagree with this at all, and there's not really a good reason to, but I can understand it. Just please a little bit more clarification on it next time. One thing that some drivers will need to be clarifying is some of the incidents that happened this week. There was a chaotic race in Singapore. I think there's a lot of disrespect, and I could probably look at myself and say, look, I need to do better too, but rivalries continuing in Tier 3 Singapore include Ryan versus Mythic, SV versus Ardell, and Will versus Invade. Polish, your thoughts on this?
I mean, it is Singapore. Rivalries and bumps are going to happen. There's going to be crashes. So I'm not surprised that Singapore is the place where all these rivalries started to flare up a little bit. But we were in the party with most of these people, and we could tell it was getting a little feisty out there between these guys. So it'll be interesting to see if it transfers over to Abu Dhabi this week.
Yeah, just please, the respect in this tier needs to go back the way it was. Tier 2 had like 3 weeks without a clip submission, and every little thing needs to be reported. I mean, come on, just there's I'm not saying you can't get your competitor penalized, but just the disrespect toward one another after these incidents, I haven't seen it in the other leagues I've been racing recently. However, I'll let you take this next one, Polish, as always.
Yeah, unfortunately, Tier 3, Singapore has a little more to it. Noah Boy was banned from the tier. This was after just having... I don't even know what you would say. It was just an interesting race, to say the least. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I think the admins, not that it's the wrong choice, but I think this is another scenario, kind of like Zora at Miami, where it kind of jumping to conclusion. Was it intentional? Was it not? I mean, this was a pretty bad look from Noah Boy, no doubt about it. One bad race, though, it was very, very bad, and it just was not a good look at all. So I feel bad for him, but this is the right call. However, another right call that had to be mentioned before any sort of penalties was Alistair not being in the lineups. He was racing in the Mercedes around Tier 3 Singapore and went from last to basically P2. Well, he's not going to keep that because Wavy, the TP, didn't put him in the lineups. And this is a bit funny because Owen was removed before the end of the game cycle from Mercedes for inactivity as a TP, and now you could argue maybe this was too.
Yeah, if I was Alistair, I'd be absolutely fuming. He ran probably the best race he's ran in a long time. He even said it in the party with us. That was like his best race in a long time, and he's gonna have nothing to show for it, unfortunately. And it's hard to say whose fault it is. Wavy maybe just didn't see anything about it, but at the same time, you got to put some blame on the TP there. You really should be checking in on your drivers.
George knows it a little too well, sadly, from Wavy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyways.
But Maddie gave Sauber their first Tier 2 points finish since the first race of 2025. Obviously, it was a shortened field, but still impressive nonetheless from the Tier 3 driver.
Yeah, he's probably going to end this season with more points than Polo God, which is just sad for Polo. But at the same time, though, it's kind of ironic that Beatnik was the one who gave him the Leral points. He got on the podium, and after that, you also have to consider Night Owl won this race, and he also won his first race when Sauber had their last points. So I guess all the stars aligning together, and that's a good thing to see from Maddie, who's been working for it. Speaking of Tier 2, Jack and George, they raced in Tier 2 to help the numbers due to lack of attendance. Some people were happy about this, some people weren't. I don't really care personally right now, being it a few days later, but I feel like at the time it's a fair reason to be upset about it.
Yeah, at the time I wasn't happy with it either, especially Jack, because he is just not tier 2 pace. Like, you could argue George would be like somewhat tier 2 pace, but Jack is like not at all tier 2 pace, so I
No,
can understand.
and they'll be disqualified, by the way, they said too. So
Yeah, they would be disqualified. I appreciate them
guess.
trying to help the numbers, and it was very nice of them to like try and help the numbers and try and get the numbers up. But like at the same time, maybe you could have had people in there that were more tier 2 pace, but
I guess
it's hard to say exactly.
Looks bad being at the front of the DRS train when you have your McLaren in front, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it is what it is. I think it was an okay move. I don't really care at this point.
Not bothered either at this point. I was at the time though, but
yeah, no,
it's
not
just
at all.
A video game.
Yeah, of course, but someone who's definitely not bothered is Villa Fusion. Got a point on his F1 debut from P19 on the grid. Also after a lap 1 crash in the Aston Martin. Your thoughts, Ryan?
Hey, a good track for him. A good turnaround from the day before. I gotta really credit this. This was after a lap 1 crash in turn 3-ish area, and he was 5 seconds behind, I'm pretty sure, after that start. So fair play. And speaking of drivers who got involved in incidents and may have to face the stewards room, Leo Lund, he got a podium on his return, I should say, but he's gonna have a lot of luck in the stewards room, like we said. A lot of incidents he was involved in. This would be Haas's first F1 Tier 1 podium if they keep it. Very good stuff there. I think Leo Lund on that day could be turned from maybe a villain to everyone's favorite person if he does keep this. I don't know.
Everyone knows Leo Lund's pace. It's not really... It's weird to say that it's not surprising that Haas was on the podium, but like it really wasn't. We all know Leo Lund's pace. We all know how fast he is.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really surprised.
Fair play though.
Yeah, that same race. I don't know why we're doing this, but we were going 5 wide. 5 wide at Brazil. Shorts, ding, red, Maxwell, and blonde. And what do you think happened when they were 5 wide? They crashed.
Well, yeah, and luckily it was only 1 car off. I'm surprised about, I must say. It was F1 Shorts. See, the thing is, those were the cars from left to right that were 5 wide, by the way. And you wouldn't expect the turn it was in unless you saw the photos themselves. That was exiting turn 4 and exiting turn 5, that second left-hander there. What a dumb accident. Well, I must say, though, luckily only 1 crashed. And you know what? If we're going to talk about weird things, here's something else weird that happened. Probably not the weirdest retirement ever in RPL, but definitely one of the weirdest reasons. Tiro, who was making his 2nd start in Tier 1, had to pick his sister up from the nightclub. Now, this was the only retirement from that race, but Polish. We've had drivers like Borbin, who had a weird reason, which I'm not going to say on here, have to retire, but that's definitely one of the weirdest.
I love it. It's fantastic. It's absolute shithousery, and I'm absolutely here for it. Tiro, I don't know where Tiro's from. If you could just elaborate that for me.
No idea. I
have
no idea.
But like, I don't know.
care now at this point. Ireland, I think.
That's a little too early to be leaving a nightclub. Like, come on. It's like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. At least stay till midnight. Like, I don't know what happened. I'm not gonna point fingers. I don't know what happened.
Not my business.
There.
Not my business
at all. But it's absolute shithousery, and I love it. It's fantastic.
Take the 2 penalty points.
Yeah, he might get 2 penalty points, but I think it was worth it because that's absolutely hilarious. But
yeah.
Speaking of people that are getting penalties for not having next-gen consoles, they will not be allowed to race. F125 will not be allowed to be played on old-gen consoles. It will not be coming on old-gen consoles, only new-gen and PC. Your thoughts on that, Ryan?
I'm glad I got a new gen a few months ago, but I don't know who does or doesn't have one. I think the only person I might be aware of, and I could be wrong on this, correct me if I'm wrong, Zakaria, but best of luck on that one. Either way, our upcoming races this week for our finales in the game cycle. Remember, we still have off-season races that are going to happen, but these are the last points-paying races on the F124 game cycle for RPL in our seasons. Tier 3 at Abu Dhabi, a potential Drivers and Constructors Championship still to be won. Tier 2 having Saudi Arabia, just a Constructors to be won. Congratulations, Night Owl, on that title. And for Tier 1, we have both titles wrapped up, and maybe, like you said, shithousery, going to happen in Abu Dhabi. Both McLaren drivers and championships already won there, but one final race there on the game cycle. Abu Dhabi, Jack's Playground. We'll see if he does go. I believe it could be 4 in a row. Let's see. Season 8, yes. Season 9, yes. We didn't race there season 10, but season 11 we did. And Jack won there. So there you go. Maybe 4 in a row for Jack around his playground. We'll have to find out. Either way, we'll see you then for our upcoming races. Ryan Searles, Polish Hammer, we're both signing off. We hope you have a good day or a good evening wherever you're at and whenever you're watching this. Until next time, see you then.